Owen Farrell has been called up by the British and Irish Lions, the son of Andy Farrell, something I'm sure won't come up at all.
I think we are the first channel who's realised that, who's done the digging, who's gone online and gone to like wikipedia.com and gone, whoa, they're related?
What we don't realise is Gabriel Farrell's going to be called up any day now, his other son.
It sets Owen Farrell up really nicely for his Ireland call-up in a couple of years' time.
Yeah. And it also sets up a real dilemma, because for the first time, Andy Farrell will have both his actual son, Owen Farrell, and the man he pretends is his son, James Gibson Park, in the same room. So how is he going to cope with this? This is a whole dilemma. Owen Farrell is becoming just the 5th player to ever go on 4 Lions tours, which is an incredible stat. Moves him very much like calmly into the collective of Lions legends. He was there last time they toured Australia in 2013. I would argue who's already there, but this is confirmation of anything else.
Before we discuss whether or not he should be on this tour, his role on this tour, whatever, right? Let's talk about the legacy of Owen Farrell as a Lion. Because 2013, they just went with 2 10s, him and Johnny Sexton. And it was a little bit controversial taking him because he felt pressure in that Six Nations, right? In a way that we've basically not seen him feel pressure.
It's interesting. So he kind of came through as he played South for the first time as a 16, 17-year-old.
16.
Then quickly bedded in. By the time he was 20, he was playing for England in 2012. Was brought in as kind of like the hard reboot on that team after 2011. That World Cup, there was a disaster. They brought in Owen Farrell. He took over the 10 shirt by that 3rd game against Wales, and from there was excellent, right? Was so good in a win over the All Blacks that autumn, world champion Imperial Affairs All Blacks, who they lost something like 4 games over the whole World Cup cycle, but one of them was to England, and Farrell was absolutely brilliant in that game. Then that Six Nations, he was broadly very good. Then on the Lions tour, you could tell he was a bit... perhaps he didn't have his best rugby on that tour, right?
Not at the start of it anyway. Towards the end, in the midweek team, he was excellent.
That's it. He started the first 2 games of the tour, and you could tell it was sort of like, it felt like a step up. And it's one of the very few times in his career you felt that.
And he didn't get on in the first 2 tests of that tour, and the 3rd one he did. And the thing is, the 3rd one was the one where the Lions won very convincingly, but he actually came on when it was really tight and played really, really well.
And he was excellent. And he said, like, as that tour went on, you saw him grow into the shirt. There's the famous clip of, he was, 22 on that tour? Famous clip of Paul O'Connell going, why is everyone else so quiet? Why is Owen Farrell the only guy who's bossing us around? Why is he the guy who's leading this team? You then come back 4 years later. In the interim, he has become England's best player. He has become a real star. And he comes into 2017 as one of the best players on the tour. And he is excellent during that tour. He is absolutely critical, plays all 3 tests, ends up kicking the goal to equalise in that 3rd test. And to win the 2nd test. Like, he is just absolutely brilliant.
Throws that pass to set up to Lupe Faletau in the 2nd test as well, which was phenomenal. And at that point, you're already looking at him and going like, this guy is a test match animal. Like, he is made and born to win test matches. And I don't know about you, but like, I remember when he was lining up that kick to win the game, there was just, I felt this sense of calmness that I've never felt with a player that I was supporting on my team before. And like, obviously that includes like even Dan Biggar in 2015 and Lee Halfpenny in 2013 and like, players like that. I just felt like, okay, of all the players and teams I supported, I want Owen Farrell taking this kick. And he did, and he slotted it, and it was clutch. It was incredible.
And he was brilliant. And kind of nailed himself in, as you said, as a kind of Lions legend that day for creating that draw in New Zealand, their best results in 1971 in New Zealand. And then 4 years later, he comes out in South Africa, and he is critical. He comes on and kicks the points that wins the game again in the 1st test.
Once again, I knew he was going to get that kick. It's just it was what Owen Farrell was at that time.
And he was just the safe pair of hands, right? And then 2nd test doesn't go according to plan. 3rd test, he gets dropped for Finn Russell on the bench. I was of the opinion at the time that he should have started over Dan Biggar, even as a Welsh fan, even as a Not Spurs fan who like grew up.
No, as a Lions fan,
but like like that didn't come into thinking. To me, it was like Farrell should have been the 10 then. And this has always been a very pro Owen Farrell channel. I am of the opinion that he might be England's best player in the professional era, and therefore right up there of all time.
Alongside Wilkinson. It's for me, I think it's very hard to separate those two.
I'm saying might be. I think he's top 5 in terms of England's great
undoubtedly top 5.
with huge apologies to Charlie Hodgson. He is about as good as it gets, and that is very much this channel's stance, right?
Yeah.
The question becomes, when you're looking at this guy who's played 100 plus games and has been, as we say, going since 2012, is now the time for him to be on this Lions tour?
Yeah.
When he hasn't played Test rugby since the World Cup in 2023, and he hasn't been playing his best rugby. He's been playing for this Racing team where he has been criticised by the owner, he's been under fire from the press, he was described as a flop of the season by Media Olympique, and you've got to ask the question of, like, is now the time for him?
Yeah, and it's a completely fair question, because as I say, he's a Lions legend. I must admit I was very surprised by this, because, I mean, the obvious name that they could have gone with instead is Dan Lancaster. No, I'm obviously kidding. But,
well, okay, let's do this now, right, because you mentioned it. There are two obvious names, I think, right? So Elliot Daly is going home, which is a real shame. He's been brilliant in all 3 games so far, and I think has grown into being every non-English, like, non-former English Lions fan.
Yeah.
Grown into being their favourite kind of player they've adopted from another nation, right?
Yeah, I think
like
over
this tour, like everyone's grown to love Elliot Daly. It's really been this kind of redemption arc for everyone forgetting about him and being like,
everyone scratched their head when he was on the tour,
yeah.
And then suddenly you're like, oh no, he's just brilliant.
And before the Six Nations, when I think a lot of us kind of forgotten about him and kind of like put him in a box with like Johnny May and so on,
great
England players who are now past their best.
I should add, not everybody scratched their heads, because a few people on Twitter yesterday were very keen to point out to me that they were the one guy who knew that Elliot Daly was good, so congratulations.
Yeah, but like, you know, he's then been brilliant on the tour.
Yeah.
Great tourist, plays every position. And you thought that there were two like-for-like guys you could call up if you want a utility back, kind of Swiss Army knife player, right? They were Jamie Osborne of Leinster
We talked
Island.
about those two competing for the same spot before the tour.
We were pretty clear on like those two.
One of those two will go.
Yeah. Same as said, like Jack Willis and Pollock will go for the same spot. Like we very much felt like that was it. And the other guy is Tom Jordan of Scotland and Glasgow, who has been excellent as well and can likewise play 10, play 12, play 15.
And interestingly, he isn't in the Scotland team this weekend.
Yeah.
So part of me wonders whether he kind of said to Gregor, like, I might have a shot here, like, give me a rest this weekend. And unfortunately, it's not gone his way. As much, like, Tom Jordan's a great player, and it would have been good to see him get a crack. The other side of this, of course, is that Elliot Daly's played 2 games in a row at fullback, and now, suddenly, and we're going to talk about the game this weekend against the Waratahs later on in a different video, but they have gone with Hugo Keenan and Blair Kinghorn in the same starting 15, because they are now both suddenly fit and ready to play rugby for the Lions in Australia for the first time on this tour. So fullback is probably actually quite a well covered position at this point, and obviously they've used Marcus Smith there already. So I get that maybe they don't want to call up another fullback. Maybe, as you say, they'd go for a utility player. Maybe they'd even go for Darcy Graham as just like, who's like their next best player who plays in any of the positions that Elliot Daly does. That I could understand that they may have gone for that. So from that angle, then picking a fly half, an experienced like clutch goal kicking fly half, who hasn't played international rugby in 2 years, right? Let's just say how it is. That's weird. That just feels unusual, doesn't it? However, this is not just any fly half we're talking about. We are talking about Owen Farrell. As well, while we're talking about players who potentially could have been in the conversation, right? As if we're calling for another fly half, right? People will talk about George Ford. And I get it. Because George Ford is similar-ish to Farrell, like in terms of what style of player, if you simplify it, in terms of he's a 10 who manages everything around him, who's a very good kicker of the ball as well, who is there for his brain above all else, right? So I get that, and George Ford has critically been playing international rugby, at least a little bit, well, more than Farrell has, for sure. And as well, like Jack Crowley, Sam Prendergast, other players who you're looking at, Sam Prendergast, Jack Crowley, just so I don't get accused of bias of which way around that I say those two names. I was going alphabetical, but yeah, those two obviously really, really well-renowned 10s. Both have been really, really good in the autumn of Six Nations, right? So, and they're above Owen Farrell, you would think, on the basis of international rugby. However, once again, this isn't just a random guy they've plucked off the streets. This is Owen Farrell.
I also don't think he's going as a fly half. I think he's going as a centre.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of Farrell's had a look at his options in midfield, and he's basically down to just, is it the Scottish combo of Tuapolotu and Jones, or is it the Irish combo of Rig Rosnarki, or do you mix and match them? And I think he maybe wants another option there. And that kind of guy covering that was Daly. He's now going home. So instead, you then bring in Owen Farrell as a 12, and you go, okay, we've got someone who can be a different kind of 12, because it's very much like Archie and Tuipulotu are both ball carriers. You think of them as ball carriers who have so much more subtlety to the game.
Yeah.
And Tuipulotu and Ringrose are both like 13s who hit lines, and they've got kind of two types of player in that midfield, but they've got like accent differences between them.
Yeah.
And then you want something different.
I know what you mean, like Jones and Ringrose are very different players, but also you're right, like if you really simplify it,
what they are, you can break them down into that, right?
Yeah,
and then
100%.
They play a similar game, but they play it in incredibly different ways.
Yes, yeah.
I think he then wants something different in midfield, and you go, well, who can provide that? And is like actually bringing that in. It's like when we look at the squad, what is an issue area, and midfield isn't a problem. But I don't think anyone's really nailed themselves into their test team. I think it's still a bit split open.
Yeah.
You also don't call up Owen Farrell if you're planning to just play the midweek games, right? Like, in terms of names that have also come up, because Elliot Day's primarily played in the back three on this tour, he's mostly played fullback. Blair Murray's name's come up, and if you think Blair Murray should be... One, can you imagine the like culture shock if you replace the most sensible, like, nailed-on serious guy on the tour in Elliot Daly, and you just replaced him with like 4'5" of absolute party? Can you imagine like replacing him with like Blair Murray, who comes in like with party poppers dancing, walking backwards trying to...
That would just confirm that Andy Farrell's a little bit too obsessed with footedness.
Yeah.
that was all that would say to me.
Also, like, if you seriously think Blair Murray should be called up for this line, so you're not a serious person. Like, come on, like, he's great fun. He's not a liar.
Yeah. He'll do well against Japan on Saturday, but we'll leave that there.
He'll score a great consolation try for Wales against Japan,
but he's not making the Lions test team.
No.
Let's put it that way.
No, he will be called up to play midweek games, right? Likewise, Tom Jordan will probably be called up to cover lots of positions in midweek games.
Yeah.
Owen Farrell, you only call up if you want it for the tests.
Yeah. That's it, because Owen Farrell, as we previously mentioned, hasn't played Test rugby since the 2023 World Cup. He's not really played that much top 14 rugby. He's not played as much as a player of his calibre should have done, let's put it that way, right?
Dan Lancaster's been starting over him.
Yeah, and as you say...
Tellingly is not on this tour.
No, as you say, Media Olympique calling him the flop of the season or whatever, right? Okay, fair enough, you can hail all these criticisms at Owen Farrell. Maybe he's not playing like the absolute best rugby of his career, right? Partially probably because he's out of the spotlight, there's a little bit less pressure on him, and he's been so charged up and motivated the whole time.
There's something about Racing, right, that their big money signings never come off. You look at Sexton did not play his best rugby there.
Jamie Roberts,
damn idiot. But like Sia Khaleesi most recently was criticised by the owner, like clearly they're just a bad club, a bad fit for like, they keep spending this money on these big names and then they don't get the best out of them ever.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. But with that, I just don't know if there's a player in as long as I've been watching rugby who is more primed to just turn it on and flip the switch as soon as they're back in a Test rugby environment than Owen Farrell.
You look at the best rugby he played for Racing, which was the last 15-20 minutes against Connacht, when Racing were away in the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup, and they're in a knockout situation. They were behind, and suddenly they bring Owen Farrell on, and he goes, no, winning drop goal. He goes, no, let's shut the game down, let's play sensible rugby, let's play knockout rugby, let's win this game.
Yeah.
And Connacht had been hot shit in that tournament. They'd won every game for bonus point up until then. They'd been like completely dominant. They were the favourites for the tournament probably at that point. Just if you were to look at the tournament itself. And then Owen Farrell came on and was like, I'm not having this.
I'm bored, might as well win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he can just do that. You put him in a test scenario and he can just do that. You look at all the criticism during and before the 23 World Cup, which he said now caused him to retire from international rugby. He just couldn't handle the fact that he felt he was playing well, and he was. But he was getting a lot of criticism from...
The English rugby media always get bored of their best players and just decide to berate them. We've seen it happen to
Marcus Smith recently.
It's happening to Marcus Smith at the moment.
It'll happen to Pollock in 2 years' time.
It's happening to Ben Earl as well, because he celebrates and he's passionate, and so they don't like that. It's happened to Elliot Daly several times. Like, there's so many players recently. It happened to Ben Youngs. It's happened to so many players, and it's just like, you have got a world-class player here. Enjoy it.
Absolutely. And Farrell's had it worse than anyone else, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing to see him get that huge reception in Dublin when he was on the screen as a Lions legend, and people to just cheer him. And him looking quite overcome by that,
Yeah.
because he said like he got so used to just being booed all the time, wherever he went in France, wherever he went during the World Cup.
Just because he's passionate. People often mistake that with him being a knob.
But also like
because he makes the odd high tackle every now and then.
I remember one fan in France saying to us in a fan zone somewhere, referring to him as a straitjacket for Marcus Smith, and he just takes all the flair out of him. And I'm like, that wasn't what was happening if you actually look at what was going on.
No, they actually worked well together.
They worked really well together. They really did connect.
It was just a narrative that the media created because they're very different players.
Yeah. And instead, you saw like them popping up and like Farrell would do a boring job, which is like dropping off to a forward so that Marcus Smith could set wider and arrange something, or like look to
or even run himself.
Yeah, exactly. Like it allowed Marcus Smith more time and space, and he's so good at that. You look at so much of the best rugby that Sexton played in his career was when he had Farrell alongside him. George Ford likewise. How many fly halves has he got the best out of, or got to play better than themselves?
I mean, it's a whole different kettle of fish talking about the whole Marcus Smith 10/fullback thing, right? Obviously, part of this is that presumably that means that Marcus Smith is just going to be looked at as a fullback because he's an extra 10 on tour, or as you say, it might just be that Farrell's just in there as 12. Who knows? But with all of that, I mean, look, I'll just say I'll keep it brief, but I'm not the biggest fan of Marcus Smith as a fullback. I think he's good there, but I think it's because he's a good rugby player rather than because it's his better position. However, there are benefits to playing him there in that he gets more space, he gets room to run, he gets a few more options because you can get people either side of him.
He is the fastest of the three fullbacks they've got.
Exactly, yeah. Like in terms of his actual skill set, it does quite suit him. However, having Farrell as the 12 outside him as a 10 allowed him to actually slide wider and let Farrell organise some phases and gives him the opportunity to do the fullback thing. And he drops into the back line anyway, like the backfield, generally when he's playing fly half regardless. So having Farrell there allowed him to be both simultaneously a fly half and a fullback. And the two of them worked really, really well together. And in the context of this Lions tour, that might open things up as well for Finn Smith to sit back and go, okay, what's on him? Where can I provoke the ball into? What areas of this defensive line can I unlock in a couple of phases' time? And Finn Russell and Owen Farrell on the same pitch, like those two will be on a wavelength, especially in terms of their kicking game. The two of them love to really just piss off back threes, and it's something they're really, really good at. With Finn, it's more with like annoying kicks that are low to the ground or hard to catch or whatever. With Farrell, the aerial game he has is world class. It is the aerial bombs, like they are so hard to take for oppositions, and he puts his wingers in really nice positions. Tommy Freeman will love having Owen Farrell put balls in the air for him.
It's incredible how many of these England players alone have never played for Owen Farrell. Like Finn Smith never has. Tommy Freeman, I think, once. And Australia a few years ago. Like, it's incredibly rare. A lot of these players just like haven't had the opportunity. So that's great as well. It adds some drama. I am not worried about the fact he hasn't played Test rugby. I think he is the ultimate Test match animal. He is, in terms of if anyone can just say flip the switch and get up to Test standard, it's him.
There's nobody I trust more than him in the British and Irish Isles.
Would you have made this call yourself?
Probably not because of the guy who went off. I probably, because it was Elliot Daly, would have just gone, I'd have played it safe and gone Jamie Osborne, right? But do I love this? Yes, I do. I'm hyped for this. Owen Farrell's line's great. And, you know, I've enjoyed a Test win and a Test draw because of Owen Farrell. Well, partially because of Owen Farrell. The win, I can't exactly pin on him. But again, he was brilliant in that third Test, which won it.
I feel a little bit like Razzie in the last World Cup, right? When he put in like 18 scrum halves and 14 hookers, and then was like, well, if one of them gets injured, I'll just call him Andre Pollard because we're not going to put him in. And I think there's a little bit of that I'm like, I've got this deep into the tour, and I'm like, I kind of wish we had Owen Farrell in this squad. I kind of wish we had someone who was a known like Test match animal he can bring off the bench in the Tests, as was his role in 2021, and delivered that flawlessly in the first Test.
And look after the other lads around him.
Exactly. That's the other thing you're replacing with Elliot Daly, right? Is you want someone experienced who's been on tours before who can calm the team down. We talked about this when we were picking the squad beforehand, but like Daly's big role here, and you could see it in that Argentina game in particular, is he is someone that's been on these tours before, and if you are under the sticks, you're down against Argentina, or you're down this weekend against the Waratahs or whoever, right? You've like gone behind early. Who do you want talking to you? Do you want the very talented young lad from Leinster in Jamie Osborne? Do you want Tom Jordan? Do you want Blair Murray going, woo, woo, let's go skateboarding?
Sam Prendergast.
Or do you want Owen Farrell, a guy who's been on Lions tours before, who knows how to motivate a team. And Paul O'Connor was saying he was 22, motivated the team better than anyone else in there. The team included countless like Lions and 50-cap internationals. Right, who do you want? You want Owen Farrell.
Imagine you're Finn Smith at this point as well, and you've got a chance to now play alongside your hero growing up, the guy who played in the shirt that you wanted for that time. Although, granted, that
Dan
would have
Biggins been called up.
No, that would have been Dan Parks. It was not about or Duncan Weir, but
Duncan Weir could have been called up.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, regardless.
But I think for me, a big part of why, maybe the biggest part of why Farrell's been called up is as a leader.
Yeah.
And you looked at on the pitch after the Argentina game when we sat there in the stands, right? Daly was the guy leading the team talk afterwards.
Yeah.
Like Daly was the guy who brought them in and went like, we need to be doing this. And likewise, when he came on, he called all the backs in and he went like, what are we doing, lads? And gave that team talk that like Finn Smith wasn't giving.
Yeah.
Right. And that isn't criticism of Finn Smith. He was running the game.
No, Finn Smith's going to get loads out of
Exactly. But like you wanted enough back to come on and go like, okay, we need to do this. There was one scrum in particular in that game, and I don't think it's picked up on the TV when we watched it back, where the lines are set in a certain way defensively, and then Daly, who's playing 13, kind of like calls over to Finn Smith whilst the referee's talking to the props and goes like, we need to set up like this, and Smith kind of nods and they then set it completely differently afterwards. And we couldn't get the footage, like it wasn't shown on the TV, but like you could see it from the stands. And just like that is what they're bringing into the squad. Is
somebody
like
outside of 10 who can see things a bit differently.
And I think that is the key angle. I'll ask this question. I think it's stupid, and we'll give a one-word answer each. Do you think nepotism's got anything to do with this?
Sort of.
Really?
I don't care.
Yeah. I was going to say obviously not. But obviously not. Like
does it matter?
Exactly.
Like,
I don't.
It's Owen Farrell.
Exactly.
Like people say shit like people say shit like this makes a mockery of the tour and stuff like that. Absolutely fucking not.
Yeah.
Like
it's
honestly,
the best players in Britain and Ireland.
Grow up.
And Owen Farrell has been one of them for the last decade.
Yeah.
Plus.
The only way in which it might be nepotism is because he's got his number on speed dial, right? And he knows he's available. Yeah. Right, and he knows he's not.
Berate him in the night and ring him when he's sleeping.
Exactly. I don't think for a second he's going like, oh, you know what? You know who's really good? It should be my son. Oh, we find it's nothing like
it's
that.
Not a Dan Lancaster situation. Like you mentioned him earlier. Like it's not that.
Yeah.
Like his son is one of England's greatest players of all time.
Exactly.
And he's gone. Well, you know.
So when I say sort of, I mean from that angle.
Yeah.
I don't think he rates him more because he's his son. For a second.
Before the squad was named, I sort of think like being the coach's son counted against him.
I
think Farrell was probably very aware of that, and has now got to this point in the tour and is like, actually, I kind of want Owen Farrell here.
Yeah. Oh, 100% it is that. He doesn't want to be accused of the whole nepotism thing, and then suddenly, having Owen Farrell will not harm the squad one bit.
No.
Even if he might not make the test team, right? Because he's got a lot of making up to do in just a couple of games, really. But that's fine. He's the best thing that could happen to the midweek team at the very, very worst. So, we obviously are pro Owen Farrell here because we actually watch him play and watch what he does rather than going, oh no, he's woke, he kicks the ball, he starts fights all the time, oh, he's too passionate for me, or whatever it is the English media say about him. Honestly, people saying like it makes a mockery of the Lions and stuff. It's like this is honestly the Geography 6 thing was worse than this. Like by a country mile.
The worst thing I've seen is people saying like, "Oh, this will lose in the dressing room, Farrell. Like this will split the players." And I'm like, the thing is, do you know like there are two groups of people who are the most feverishly pro Owen Farrell, right? Number one is people that have coached him.
Yeah.
Like coaches who've worked with him are so unbelievably. This guy's one of the best guys I've ever worked with. Like Eddie Jones said he's like maybe the best player he ever coached. Or he said he was like George Smith, then it was like, Owen Farrell was like, up there. Gatlin said on the last tour was like when he left Wales initially was like, I think Owen Farrell might be the best player I ever worked with alongside Sam Warburton. Like these come up time and time again. Like he's always on those lists.
Mark McCall,
the other thing, the other group are players that played alongside him.
Yeah.
And all of them are so like many.
The third one, players who played against him.
Yeah.
You look at. I remember listening to Sam Warburton talking on the Scrum 5 podcast about his top 5 opponents, and he put Owen Farrell on there.
His teammates, his top 5 teammates.
Oh, his teammates, and he talked about playing against him for playing for England in the Six Nations, and he talked about Alan Wynne-Jones going on a short pick and go angle against Owen Farrell, and normally you look at that and you go mismatch. And Alan Wynne-Jones is pointing at him like, I'm running at Farrell. And Farrell's like slapping his shoulders like, fucking come at me then. Come at me.
Yeah.
And it's like, What fly half does that to Alan Wynne-Jones?
Yeah.
And like he smoked Alan Wynne-Jones?
Yeah.
And it's just like, who does that?
Yeah, and that's the guy, right? Like, so you love.
They all respect him.
Guy. Yeah, as I say, you enormously respect him if you play against him. Like, you speak to anyone that's played for Owen Farrell, and they are the most relentlessly like, I love playing with him.
Yeah.
He's the best guy to have in the camp.
He seems like a sound bloke as well.
He is much less completely relentless than Sexton at points bigger. Like, he is like a much chiller and calmer and more normal
The
guy.
bar is here.
I know.
And Farrell's about there.
Yeah. But like, no, I think he's also a much more reasonable guy who can switch off from it.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you put him on the pitch, you get him over that threshold, and he is the most relentless, we will win guy in the world. And that is ultimately what Lions Test Series are about.
Yeah.
Like, everyone will forget if they lose the Warrior Toss at the weekend if they win the Test Series 3-0.
100%. Well, we'll wrap that up there, I reckon. So, Owen Farrell's on tour. As a Lions fan, describe in one word how you feel about that.
Honestly, excited.
Hyped.
Ecstatic. Yeah, like, I'm really... I can't wait to see Owen Farrell.
I didn't think I'd get to cheer for Owen Farrell ever again.
Yeah.
And this would probably be the last time I ever do it.
Unless he signs for the Dragons.
Unless he signs for the Dragons.
If you can
he's qualified for Wales.
Of course. If you can call up one random English legend who hasn't played for England for at least 2 years, who are you having? With apologies to Dusty Hair, I'm saying David Duckham. I don't care that he's dead. I'm having him run it out on the wing. I know it's kind of the ultimate issue, his death, but I think he's in a decent state.
Are you a Rinley?